The Smallwood incident. I've posted about this story a few times in the last couple of months, but as I find new information, I am updating my story. Since my last post here, I've talked to the elders in my town and corrected a few mistakes I made before. I may have to change some other aspects of the story as I search for more information, but the story itself is true. Before I start, I will answer some of the FAQs and respond to the typical comments this story has gotten. Who are you? I am a resident of Smallwood who is just trying to get the truth out and hopefully solve this crazy mystery that has captured my hometown for more than 20 years. I cannot give out my real name for obvious reasons, so I'll try to go by the name Small Anon in this thread. Where is Smallwood? I cannot say for certain. In the past, there have been rumors of people who tried to talk about the incident getting visited by the men in black. Although the government has obviously denied these claims, the townspeople who tried to go to the press always end up cancelling at the last minute. The last of these people, a woman known as Miss Mabel, reportedly developed a large scar at the back of her neck near the base of her skull. Her friends and family have said her personality changed seemingly overnight, as did her eye color. I do not want to end up like this. All I can say is that Smallwood is a normal American small town in the Midwest. There are a few shops on the main street, and most of the kids eat Happy Meals at the local McDonald's on weekends, but there is a dark belly to this place that I want to solve. This story is fake. You are gay. You have a small penis. This is some film marketing, etc. Very well. I do not ask you to believe this story. I myself can hardly believe it. If I had not grown up in this town and heard the whisperings of people about the story, if you do decide to believe me and accept the Smallwood incident, then I can guarantee you're in a rabbit hole deep. Now, let me tell you the story itself. As I said before, I've talked to the elders in my town, so the story has changed some since I last posted it. I've rewritten it completely. On the morning of January of the winter of 1980, 48 8th grade students from the local school, Smallville Junior High, boarded a bus to go on a field trip to the Smallwood Museum of Science, just 2 miles away. It was snowing that day, which some kids thought would mean that the trip was cancelled, but the teachers assured them that nothing will stop this trip, grinning. Typically, the school buses would have chains on the tire for driving on the snow, but this one did not. When the bus driver, a man only known in police files as Mr. T, tried reporting this, he was told that it was perfectly safe. Some people reported seeing men in black remove the chains the night before, but this has never been proven. In a later interview, Mr. T reported feeling uneasy taking the job and was certain that the trip should have been cancelled. He also reported seeing a black box installed in the bus, which was not usually there. The bus was last seen leaving Smallwood Junior High at 7 a.m. on the 6th of January, 1980. Neither Mr. T nor the kids were ever heard from again. When the kids did not come back that night, the parents got worried and called the police, but were assured that everything was fine and that the snow had just made it impossible for them to come home. They said that they would be back in the morning. That night, the townspeople reported seeing blue and purple lights coming from the direction of the Science Museum, but this has never been confirmed. When the kids did not come back the next day, the parents got upset, but the police told each of them that the kids were staying at their friend's house. Because this was before cell phones or the internet, the parents believed it. An unusually heavy snow happened that night of more than 20 inches, which made it impossible for the parents to leave their house. No one suspected a thing for days. On the 15th day since the disappearance, the parents got nervous and a search party started. The police tried to stop it because it was too cold outside, but couldn't stop all of them. On the 30th day after the kids were last seen, a small camp was found in the woods with schoolwork and school books and crudely made tents and burnt out fires in gym bags. On the 41st day after the disappearance, 6 miles east of the camp, a series of graves were discovered. An autopsy found that they belonged to 3 students of Harry Carson, Sarah Miles, and Bill Madison. Along with that, a rock stack was nearby with a paper inside saying that the 3 were dead, but the students and teachers, along with parents, were still alive. The note also contained an encrypted code for where they were going, but has never been solved to this day. The code read 17376 Babas Reptilians, headed to 48539. 50 days later, in a tent was found a lunchbox and schoolwork and pencils. One of the mothers recognized the lunchbox and schoolwork as belonging to her child, Agatha H., but did not recognize the pencils. Later that night, the townspeople reported seeing the lights again, but a heavy rainstorm and snow kept them from going out into the local forest much. After this happened, the search party was banned from the forest by the police. In April, when the Smallwood River unfroze, the school bus was found. In the seat at the back of the bus was the body of Thomas E., aged 8. Thomas's body had been mutilated, and police found marks in his veins, like a needle had been used to take his blood. The rest of the bus had been ransacked, and the black box had been systematically destroyed, which took advanced knowledge to do. When investigators tried returning to the scene the next day, the bus had sunk too far into the mud. By the next day, the bus was completely sunk and was unrecoverable. Here is where things get weird and odds. Soon after, another camp was found with 3 tents and a fire in a pot over it, and in the pot, there was human flesh and skin. Also bones with cuts were found on the camp, and in the trees, tied up by strings and human hair. Student researchers at the university near Smallwood concluded that the bones had been bleached by some kind of chemicals and had been molested after their death by human tools. The cracked pelvis of a girl named Lucy N. was found 3 miles away from the camp. That's the full story, with as much information as I know anons. To this day, more than 20 years later, it's still unknown what happened to the Smallwood Junior High students in 1980 is unknown. We can only hope that they found peace. As for a Wikipedia link or some sort of newspapers, there are none. This story is impossible to find on the clear net, but can be found on old forums on the deep web. Back in 2005, when I was 15, I went on a long-ass walk at night. I live in this holiday city called Mandurah in the southwest Peel region of Western Australia and was hanging out with my mate Kieran and his brother Derek, just screwing around because the eldest had recently got his P's and we decided to go driving around. Ended up in this upper class area further out into the whoop whoop called Dawesville when the car broke down on this empty stretch of bushland road that we took, thinking it would be an adventure. About 25 minutes into driving, the car's battery died out of nowhere, which was bizarre considering the car itself was serviced within the past week. Anyway, 5 minutes into our feeble attempts at fixing the car, we decided, screw it, and we all went on a walk, figuring we were only driving for about half an hour. Can't be that long as we follow the trail back. It was getting pretty dark, and lo and behold, we all started joking about this was how all the horror movies start out. After about 2 kilometers, we found our way back to a main road, and just walked north along it when Derek stopped and said with haste, "The hell was that?" and pointed into a bush. This Aboriginal guy walked out, and I expected trouble, thinking it was some mob of teenagers or another stereotype about to ask us for $1 before throwing a glass bottle at us. Kieran was the one in our group who was the most street smart and a pretty tank Kiwi for the age of 16, standing at 6'2", so we expected him to take action should this guy start anything with us. He went into a southpaw stance and shouted at the Aboriginal man, "Get out of here. We got no beef with you, bruh," in typical fashion. The guy was pretty calm to our surprise, and for his raggedy-ass clothes, he spoke with surprising eloquence. After explaining our car situation, he said something that we all felt was a bit odd. "Be careful out here tonight, boss. Snakes roaming around will grab you." After an awkward silence and an ice-breaking joke about juvies, we all departed and went on our way. Kian seemed pretty unfazed by it all, but Derek seemed on edge. I asked him if he was cool with all of this and not to worry about his car, considering his old man owned a used car joint, and if worse came to worst, it wouldn't be an issue retrieving it. He mentioned that when his family lived back in Tauranga, New Zealand, his parents would tell him stories of snake people that used to make deals with tribes for food and peace, and it had just unnerved him is all, because his father would tell him that story whenever he yucked up as a kid to scare him into being good again. About 30 minutes into our walk, we were just on the outskirts of Hall's Head, which is a suburb near Mandurah, and a meteor glazed across the sky into some rocky mountains, bright enough to light the entire atmosphere up briefly. Video of it is in the link below. We all shat enough bricks to build the Burj Khalifa twice, and we stopped dead in our tracks, waiting for a boom, explosion, or some kind of epic doomsday earthquake, but silence. And it was a deafening silence. Crickets stopped chirping, and the wind seemed to stand still. To my amusement, Jan and Derek kept saying bro, holy shit bro, etc., and I started pissing myself at how stereotypical they were sounding. Push and chops. Only a few anons from Australia and New Zealand browsing will probably understand what I mean, but I digress. Anyway, another 20 minutes into the walk, when we were at the rich folk area near the canals, or coming to it. We had to go through this dense marshland to get there quicker, and in our infinite wisdom, we did. I'll cut straight to the point and not lead on. Shortly after we went in, we noticed things were off. There were innumerable dead birds lying about the trees, some of them torn apart, and the smell was off-putting. My dad worked at a vet, and was also an animal handler at the time, and I had been around plenty of animals with unique smells, like ferrets, camels, etc., and I knew the smell of a dead animal. This would have singed your nose hairs off. We all got a bit creeped out, thinking what could have caused this, and I figured it was some messed up pollution in the river, leading into the water nearby, but there was nothing wrong with it in the papers, or anything that came to mind. I was just trying to justify it. After our little debate was when things got real. Derek said something was following us, and Kian and I kept walking, figuring he was trying to egg a reaction out of us, when we both saw this black, amorphous being in the obscure shape of a man, moving around the trees in the distance. I already have amblyopia, so it was hard enough to make out in the dark, but Kieran was freaking out, and turned whiter than Casper the Ghost. For future reference, this is a guy that had been doing Koshin Bushido Kai Jiu-Jitsu, Goju Ryu Karate, and Muay Thai since he was 9, and has had his fair share of blues with people on the streets and the dojo. He does not scare easily. It was at this point I reached for my mobile, some crappy Nokia phone, you know, the old ones that were bricks, black and green screen, etc., that I kept because it never failed me when I dropped it. I immediately thought to call my dad to come and get us, but I was out of credit. It never occurred to me to just call the cops or something in my panic. That was when it charged at Derek, wedging it and himself between this uphill plot of mud and dirt and some sort of hedge, and it moved at the speed that made it look as if it were levitating, almost like it had no animation to its legs, but just hovered towards him at blitz speeds. Derek let out a god-awful screech, and I never knew that his voice could reach that octave, but he did, and that's when I got a good look at this thing. It was well above the size of a healthy human, standing at around 7'3", and was covered in this mucus and with scales. It had a flat face, with no nose, but this creepy, almost like a grim maw, with hundreds of sharp teeth. What stood out the most for me was its eyes, pure black, like a shark, but almond. Its head is hard to describe, like a rectangle, but not, like it was an oval with edges. To put it bluntly, imagine a snake reptilian human. Kieran picked up this wooden log and started smashing into this thing's back, and I picked up a rock that must have been a good 15 kilograms and laid onto its head. The rock rolled off and scared Derek's forehead, and this thing let out an epic wail like a banshee. Took me by such surprise, I had to cover my ears, and Kieran was swearing while whacking the shit out of this thing's back before it let go of Derek and took a swipe at Kieran, sending him a solid 15 meters backwards into the water. That's when it turned to me, and I went ghetto on this asshole, throwing anything I could pick up, and I vividly remember clipping its right eye with a stone, and it let out another bellow from hell and ran off. I was sort of in shell shock from all of the adrenaline. Everything went deaf, and there was this ringing in my ear, just like in that scene in Saving Private Ryan where they storm the beach, and Tom Hanks is hit with shell shock. I snapped out of it, and went and got Kieran out of the black water, and he came too, but he had broken his left arm. He was a pretty heavy dude, so it took some effort to drag him out, and I feared the worst before he came too, coughing out water. At that point, we noticed that Derek was standing, but he had been torn up, something hectic, open wounds on his serratus, abdominal wall, and up and down both arms, as well as his left shin. We got out of the woods, eventually coming to the old bridge near the skate park in Mandurah on Pinjarra Road, and this passerby stopped and drove us to Peel Health Campus where we all checked in. No one believed us, of course. It's only sane, given our description of the event. Police got called in, and we went through drama with them, explaining how we weren't on eckies, shrooms, or weed, etc. About 5 hours into our stay there is when it got really weird. Kieran and Derek's dad showed up and was royally pissed off. I was more scared of this man while he was angry than a Japanese man is afraid of Godzilla. The police returned, but 3 guys who looked like they were pretty high up in the order of things in suits showed up. They had been intelligence officers from ASIS, Australian Secret Intelligence Service, which is the Aussie equivalent of the FBI. One of them had a strong Southern American accent, which surprised me though. After interviewing all of us separately for a good 12 hours, asking us not to leave town and that they'd be in touch, eventually came back and told us all separately to forget and move on from these events. Anyway, for the next couple of months, Dad and I would always get tailed by the same black cars, tinted windows, etc., like something out of a conspiracy theory movie or Men in Black, as well as my mates. Dude, had been a huge urbexer for years. Lots of things for you to think about as well. First, weary breathers, always. Second, plan your adventures during a time of year everything is less active. In NY, we tend to do this between late January and early April, when it's balls cold and the mold spores are inactive. Learn light discipline. The last thing you need is cops catching you because of your flashlight. Always bring a weapon. You have no idea how many hobos I've found. A good mag light and a crowbar will serve you wonders. Never roll alone. Bring film. You may take one thing that isn't attached for keeps. Leaving a mark is really stupid. Makes it easier to identify where you've been for someone who would care to know it. Avoid breaking things. It's loud and destructive. Don't ever smoke while in a site. It frenzies the mold spores. My friend is the photo guy. He keeps all our photos. My other friend is the twat. She keeps all the souvenirs. I just enjoy scary creepy stuff and skulking around. We've seen ghosts, heard screams, taken pictures that were not recorded, have pictures we did not take. Found some seriously heinous stuff in an old psych hospital, like vaults, for crazy experiments and whatnot. Hell, we found this huge-ass bat, about 2 feet long, nose to feet, clinging to this metal grating, froze to death, poor thing. Seen some creepy stuff in some abandoned subways, like Men in Black. There are offshoots, covered in fresh walls, when it's been closed since the 70s. There were fresh tire tracks, police rounding up homeless, a shanty town, a little over 2,000 strong. We had to pay our weed that night to leave that place, and just generally weird stuff going on. I ended up dorming solo in a 2-person suite in my freshman year at university. Beginning of the year, my roommate was this real friendly, yet annoyingly avert preaching Christian type guy who was nice to everyone, never put anyone down, etc. So a few weeks into semester, and his demeanor totally changes. He basically became totally unsociable, indifferent to a lot of stuff. His times flipped. He became nocturnal, started missing his day classes. Every moment he was in our room, he was on his computer. Most of the time I would see him in his library, again, with his laptop, intensely staring at it. The one day I came home from morning class, and he was laying face down on his bed. His computer was open next to him. He was not wearing headphones at this time, and I could hear noises coming from his computer. So I look at his screen, and it was like a cartoon in its ridiculousness. What I mean is, the screen was basically changing constantly. Numbers were scrolling across, windows opening and closing. The noises I heard was actually the voice of one person whispering, though it was pretty distorted. He wasn't using any internet browser that I had seen at the time, nor any standard OS, and majoring in computer engineering, I was pretty confident in my ability to identify various software. Occasionally, the image of a man would appear. Each time he would disappear shortly after. This continued until he was close to whatever was broadcasting this video. So I get this eerie feeling, very serious fear of something, and I realize that my roommate, who has been asleep inches from my face this whole time, was now awake and had turned his head to look at me with the most hair-raising expression on his face. It was literally like he wanted to kill me with this look. So I jumped back, and he asked me what I heard. I told him nothing. His eyes were filling with tears. He pulled his laptop close to his chest and sat like that in the fetal position until I left again. The next time I saw him was also the last time. He was asking me about Tor and other ways to contact his special friend, basically without leaving a trace. Before that, I was doing everything to stay away from the guy because he had become seriously threatening in his behavior. i.e., I'd wake up with him, sitting up in his bed, facing me, no laptop. Every time a car passed on the street, the light would illuminate his face and I could see him staring at me. He would not stop asking me if I was sure I had not heard anything when I was spying on him and his friend. I did report him to RA after I talked to some people about it. In the end, I came to my room to move some stuff to my friend's dorm, and the guy was gone. In the 3 hours that had passed, literally all of his stuff had been removed. I spoke to someone living in the same house, and they literally told me some guys looking like the Men in Black movie showed up and cleaned out the room. From what I understand, the guy himself left that afternoon of his own free will with them, looking very defeated. Freakiest stuff ever. It was literally like living in a cheesy horror movie. Friend got abducted by the Men in Black during his sleep. Saw them inside the ship. He woke up thinking it was just a dream, until on his way to school, he noticed the same strange men staring at him from inside a car. That's a weird one. Yeah, obviously shat his pants in the moment and could not sleep for a month. What is interesting is he didn't know anything about MIB except for the Will Smith movies, and yet he described them exactly. Do you remember what his abduction dream was like? I don't recall if he told me how he got there, but he was just lying in a weird place with those men over him, staring. Maybe there was more to it, but I cannot remember. It's been years since he told me that story. Saw one after having a near-death experience. A bunch of white Ryder vans suddenly appeared outside of my building, out of nowhere. I was recovering, could barely stand still, and had to take my dog out to pee. That's when I crossed one that was a very military-looking man, wearing an all-black hooded raincoat, unlike anything I've ever seen anyone wear. It was not even raining. This was before I was suspicious of anything, or noticed the trucks. We made eye contact. I was expecting a friendly exchange, like I normally do with my neighbors, but he froze, like he just witnessed a ghost. I don't think we were supposed to see each other. He didn't look like a thief or anything, but he was not walking around an area that a non-resident would find themselves. The raincoat was really weird. I remember staring at it because it reminded me of the patterns on Kevlar. I was at a music festival in the Midwest and watched 3 fellas in all black suits and hats take an entire group off the grounds in handcuffs. People were asking what was going on, and they were told to mind their business by the suits. This was freaky as hell, because not only was I sober, but these dudes were never seen for the rest of the week, and their tents were gone from next to us by nightfall. Definitely an odd occurrence, but I guess they just could have been emotionless government guys busting drug dealers or whatever. The Men in Black looked extremely weird though, and said very little. Definitely freaked people out in attendance though. It's even worse than that. The security hybrids, when not in their MIB role, have to provide protection for the hybrids living in apartments on Earth while keeping abductees in line, so to speak. They are very afraid of humans attacking and mugging them, rightfully so, since their enhanced telepathic abilities can cause serious damage to unsuspecting humans nearby. It's difficult to explain, but the security hybrids fit into more of an auxiliary role. They, the aliens, are much better at abducting humans, so they are seen less frequently in recent years. What the hybridization program means to the rest of us, I do not know. Maybe they are here to help us, in a sort of interventionary role. Their goal is to control the human government, to provide the insectilians, the praying mantis types, global control of Earth's resources to benefit them, whatever that may be, bringing us into some sort of galactic federation maybe. Probably not. But they can only do that by establishing the human-looking hybrids into the highest of Earth's command structures, aka economic, governmental, and military. Thankfully, they are still struggling with arranging living rooms, human relationships, and working with Windows computers. The praying mantis types give orders, and they do not take orders. They have the strongest of the telepathic abilities. They have even been seen wearing robes with high collars, signifying rank perhaps. The reptilians are there too, but their role is to act as enforcers, to force compliance on board the UFOs when the Greys can't, especially when an abductee gets loose, meaning they are no longer under the telepathic control of a Grey, and punches and kicks the living shit out of a 4-foot Grey before they are restrained. As to why, again, I really don't know for sure. It is not an experiment. It is a goal-directed program for alien integration into human society. They want to live like us, eat like us, screw like us, all to blend in. But they have a major advantage. They can use their telepathic powers to control humans, and they take their orders from those above, and they follow them really well. Friend got abducted during sleep, saw them inside the ship. Elaborate. I have my own experience, but I don't know if it was Men in Black or the Hat Man. Be laying on my bed, almost asleep. Get a weird feeling. Look across the room at my window. Someone is at my window. I feel like it's my buddy from my school. That part is important, as I remember it now. I looked at the window and saw a black figure with a wide-brimmed hat looking at me. I could not see its eyes, but I knew it was looking at me. I approached the window and opened it to let my friend in. Why would my friend be at the window and want to enter the house this way? This thing has me completely disarmed. After I unlock my window, but before I open it, I look at the figure again and realize that something is very wrong. This is not my friend. I turn and run for my door, but my movement is sluggish, like trying to run through deep water. As I reach my door, my feet are pulled up from under me, and I begin to be pulled toward the window. I scream out for my dad, but the only thing that comes out is a strangled gasp, like I had no air in my lungs. I grab onto the doorframe as my door is open at this time, and hold on as best as I can. I try to scream again and again, but the sound just does not come out. I lose my grip and am pulled toward my window. I wake up in my bed, not sure what to think of that experience. I chalked it up to a dream for well over a year, even though I always felt a bit messed up by it. A couple of years ago, I was browsing YouTube, looking at creepy stuff, just messing around with my buddies, and I see a thumbnail on the side that has the exact same guy that I saw that night. He is called the Hat Man to these people. He looked the same, but all of their stories are nothing like mine. In theirs, the thing is always just watching them or trying to intimidate them. This was not the feeling I got around what I saw. I was terrified, sure, but it was friendly. Now, why I think it was friendly is because I have had duodenitis at the time, but after that experience, my disease became so completely negligible that I just knew they had done something to me, something to help me. Before that experience, I woke up literally every single night to barf my brains out. After the encounter, I only flare up when I eat something that messes me up. I don't know what to think about it. Something happened to me, physically, psychologically, or both, but my life has definitely been better ever since. Could be the Hat Man, but most people seem to believe he is malevolent, so it could be the MIB beamed me up and helped me out. I don't really know. That's definitely reasonable. From the best I can remember, and that's honestly not going to be super well, this was over a decade ago, and it was somebody else's story. She had a dream where she saw a tiny humanoid figure, very simplified, almost blobby, marching around on the floor in front of her bed. She tried to talk to it, but it tried to attack her in some way, and she recoiled and hid under the covers. Went back to sleep in the dream, which caused her to wake up, and then it was gone. I remember it came up again senior year because she drew it and showed it to another girl with no context who broke down into an absolute mental breakdown because she claimed she'd seen it under her bed but when she wasn't dreaming, and that it had attacked her for real multiple times. Take all of that with a huge grain of salt because it's been so long and a lot of it could technically be coincidence, but it's something. I had a dream I was standing in a circle of friends, like really old friends. They were all shrouded in shadow and could barely make out their faces, which were kind of deep dark gray. I did not recognize any of their faces, but they looked older than me. The rest of their bodies were just dark and shadowy, like if you're out in the woods at night. They were telling me something very important, though I don't remember the specifics, but as they were doing this, the dream POV shifted and I was viewing my own body asleep in my bed, seen from above. I became lucid, realizing I was dreaming at this point. I decided I wanted to try and leave my body, as I had been trying to figure out astral projection at the time with no success. It worked, but did not last long. sensory overload from the experience of the light body. I have a story which may or may not be Men in Black related, but it's sure interesting. Be me, 24, fresh out of the military, living in North Las Vegas, circa 2010. See some crazy looking lights in the sky in the desert. Friend with me, non-believer, agrees we just saw a UFO. Go home and write about it on my computer. Days go by and I add more detail and edits to it, fine-tuning. Submit it to a UFO sighting website which appeared to have many hits and responses. Hour later, someone responds. Discredits my story right away, saying it was just flares. Military background, I know what flares look like. Odd response, because no one gets discredited, usually just questions. Next day go to work, midnight to 8 a.m. Come home, my door's kicked in. Nothing appears to be missing. 60-inch Samsung TV and brand new Xbox still in the box sit next to my computer desk. Realize that my computer is the only thing missing. Was I onto something? Who would have just taken my PC and nothing else and knew my overnight work schedule?